All right, everyone. Happy Thursday. Very welcome to the Ravit Show. I'm super excited for today's show because we will be chatting with Artyom, founder and CEO of Cube.js, to discuss about various topics such as Headless BI, modern data stack, data-driven culture, data engineering, and much more. I have obviously spoken to Artyom many times, and I've learned from him a lot around the modern data stack space, about Headless BI. So feel free to let your questions coming in for him. And we'll also be doing a very cool raffle. And that would be the Cube swag. So if you are interested to win, you can actually enter the raffle. What you need to do is just type in hashtag CubeDev. And I'll pull this up for you guys very quickly. So this is what you need to type in. I can already see George Filikin joining us and typing in CubeDev, so which is fantastic. And feel free to have your questions coming for Artyom. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer those questions. Again, for those who are coming and visiting, don't forget to type in hashtag CubeDev. We'll be announcing a few winners towards the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. But without any further ado, let's have our guest here. Hey, Artyom, welcome to the Ravit Show. How are you?
Good, good. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Artyom, I was just letting the folks know about what we are talking about today is Headless BI, modern data stack, data-driven culture, data engineering. And I know for a fact with Cube and even with your journey, you've done a lot in this space. So I'm sure the audience wants to learn more about it. And we are excited, but why not start with your introduction, Artyom?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is Artyom. I'm co-founder at Cube, and I'm also one of the original authors of Cube.js open source framework that we started with my co-founder in 2019, 3 years ago. I'm software engineer. My background is in engineering. I was running engineering at few companies before starting my own company. And the first company I started was called StatsBot. That actually the company where we built Cube before open sourcing it. And the company, the StatsBot, was all about analytics as well. So that's, I think, the first time when I got really into sort of analytics space versus engineering. And the problem we were trying to solve with StatsBot was how we can get data from different places and pipe that data into Slack. So that was 2016. You probably remember days people were talking about bots, conversational interfaces. Slack was on the rise, raising more and more money. Like everyone was excited about Slack. So we were one of the first applications on a Slack directory when they launched Slack application directory. And the idea for StatsBot was how we can connect to different data sources like Google Analytics, Mixpanel, database, and maybe Salesforce, and then aggregate this data and then send the data to Slack. And while building this product, we decided to build an engine that can sort of, like do aggregation, do data modeling, and then be able to push data to different places. And that's actually became later Cube. So that's how I got into the space, and that's how actually Cube started it too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so also, I'm sure the audience is kind of super curious to learn more about how did the name come up, Cube? Like, what's the story behind that?
Yeah. So when we built the framework itself initially, even before we open sourced it, we had a few users that we were like sharing it with, so they were able to test it, and we didn't have a name back then, but what we had is in the Cube itself, when you build a data model, the major entity is being called Cube. You can think about it as like a table or data set. That's like a place where you describe measures, where you describe dimensions. And that's essentially all up Cube, right? So we kind of called it Cube inside the data model itself. And then people were like, how can I do that in this Cube.js technology? And we thought like, okay, it's just like, it's fine name, let's keep it as as is. So we decided to pick the Cube.js as a name for the whole product. Over time, we actually dropped JS because I think that was a little bit misleading, because many people, they were, like, sometimes they will think about Cube as a charting library, like a chart.js or D3.js. So we decided to remove JS from the name. So right now we're only Cube, but it's essentially, like, it's coming from the all up cubes, the name.
Okay, that's very cool story. Thanks for sharing that, Artyom. Also, obviously your journey in the data space has been quite interesting, but in today's world, people want to learn more about how, like, first of all, what's data-driven culture? And we have heard a lot about, being data-driven and what's, like, these are the ideal ways how you can be data driven in an organization. But what's your take on the data driven culture, and what do you suggest?
Yeah, that is so deep and big question that we can even have a separate show about it, probably, and not a single one. But it's actually data driven culture that I think that's a huge benefit if organization can achieve that. Obviously, like, we talk a lot about it. We talk that it's great, that's good. So we need to try to get to the data-driven culture, and that's actually true, right? And that's ideal state where, like, all the business decisions, they're being driven by the data, right? So we look at the data, we decide what kind of new products we ship, how we optimize the existing product, how we optimize processes in sales, how we optimize processes in marketing and engineering in every organization. But it's kind of hard to achieve, and I think it's never ending journey, to be honest. It's not like a single point, like in a space and time where we can say the organization achieved the data driven culture, right? It's something that you always try to endorse and try to move. And I think it's really needs to be enforced, and it needs to come as one of the core values of the organization. So it should obviously, from a like organizational perspective, it should start from the leadership. So leadership should recognize that that's sort of a company we want to build, like, where we make decision based on the data. It maybe not a good fit for every stage of the company. Sometimes early on, like, when you're just 2 people, 3 people, frankly, you don't have the data to make a decision on, right? You just do things based on your gut feeling and understanding the space. But when organization grows, right, you really started to accumulate a lot of data, and you want it to be data driven on a scale. And then it really needs to start with leadership. And then the other dimension that is sort of a challenging as well is, like, how we actually make it work, right? What tools we need to have in place. And I think that one of the biggest challenge here is, like, how we make every person in organization to be a data consumer, like how we give them tools to consume this data. Because business intelligence, it's usually, like, people have to learn it, how to use it. It's not easy to use. So we need to think about whether we need to build a custom workflow tailored tools for different roles in organization. Like, a sales had their own tools, marketing had their own tools, right? So they all can be data driven, but then we also need to make sure that they consume the same metrics, right? So that we do a good job at governance, that the data actually is consistent. And then we do a lot of in terms of observability, so we actually can trust the data, right? So there are a lot of moving parts, and again, I think it's just never ending journey. And the promise of the modern data stack, at least, right, that we wanted to build all these tools to actually build a good processes that we can deliver trusted data in a consistent way to data consumers. But like, again, it's just so deep topic, but I feel that it just we really need to enforce it on many levels and try to achieve this, like, data-driven culture at every organization.
No, I 100% agree to that, Artyom, when you say that it needs to be coming in various layers. When we talk about data-driven culture, it's not about something which we can have it at the top level or just at the base level. It needs to be at all levels, and everyone needs to be data driven, to be honest, to have that culture. And at the same time also, I have a question which is kind of related to data driven culture. When we talk about that, do you also see data literacy kind of playing a very important role in the data-driven culture?
Yeah, I think so. That's sort of one of the dimensions, right? That we need to crack the challenge here as well. Is like, first of all, it's a general like a data literacy, right? Like, what kind of different data is there? Like, what kind of different metrics, right? How the metrics should be organized, how they should be consumed, like, like overall something that is transferable between different organizations. But then you also have a domain specific knowledge, right? Like what this exact metrics mean, what metrics we should track, how we should use that. So that's an interesting problem, like to solve. And again, I think there are a lot of smart people trying to address these problems, and I'm quite optimistic. I feel, like a modern data stack overall, it experienced something that DevOps experienced maybe like 3-4 years ago, right? So we just started to see this, like revolution where we apply different techniques to the data world. And if you look back at DevOps like 10 years ago, right, you probably remember we even didn't have a Puppet or Chef, right? We were like manually managing servers, then Puppet and Chef came in, and then
Right.
like a Docker, and then finally Kubernetes. And now it feels like a very developed area. We have all the tools, best practices, all of this. I think data is a little bit early in that journey right now, but I feel, I feel we are on the right track to, to achieve a good transformation of the area overall.
Okay, yeah, pretty interesting insights. Thanks for sharing those. Also, I know there are a few questions coming here from the audience. Before I take those, obviously you touched base on the modern data stack, and I would love to, start on the topic about learning more. What's the state of the modern data stack, and where does Cube stand there? I know these are two different questions, but we can start with what's the state of the modern data stack.
Yeah, I think with the modern data stack, there are a few major tailwinds. I think that like really propelling what's happening right now. I think the first one is from a sort of a technology perspective. It just the fact that we have data warehouses right now. Back then, when with Hadoop days, that was the first technology that really enabled us to process big data, like huge amounts of data. But it was hard to do, right? You would have to hire a lot of smart people to be able really to run and manage and optimize Hadoop clusters. And that was very,
Right.
very expensive. Only a few organizations they were able to actually build this huge tech stacks with a Hadoop based. And then with data warehouses, they made it really easy, right? You buy it from a Snowflake, right, Redshift, BigQuery. So you just buy the warehouse, like uses a service, put the data in, you process, and it's pretty much works out of the box. You don't really need to configure that. So I think that fact really, like started to move and created a huge tailwind to let the modern data stack to develop. And it's all data warehouse centric now. The second huge trend, I think, is the idea of like how we can apply the best software engineering practices to the data space, right? It's a similar as mentioned with DevOps before, right? With DevOps, we started to apply software engineering best practices to manage infrastructure, right? Basically, and over time it became an interesting space with its own best practices. I think that's happening with the data. With the data, we're thinking about how we can apply all of these best practices from the software engineering and to put it into data management. How we really, like can think holistically about how we approach data as a problem at the pipeline, like with all of this observability, version control, and CI, CD, like all the best practices, and how we can, like really transform the space. I think that's what's happening with the modern data stack right now.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. We have,
yeah. And I didn't answer the part of how Cube fits into stack. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think like Cube, we call Cube a headless BI, right? So I think the way that that Cube fits into the data space is like the way Headless BI fits into it is like we now have all of these data consumers in our organizations that we try to be data driven, right? Like organizations try to be data driven. They want to expose data to every role and function in the organization. They want to expose data to customers, partners, employees, so to everyone. And it requires different data applications. It requires, embedded analytics for customers. It requires some BI tools for some teams, some custom internal workflow-based tools for maybe sales and marketing. So organizations, they end up with a lot of different ways they present data, a lot of different ways they present data application to the customers or to the internal team members. And then it creates a problem to the data teams on how we make sure that the data is consistent and accessible and fast and secure across all of these data applications, right? Because you cannot repeat data modeling in every presentation layer, in every downstream application, right? You need to make sure that the data model is the same. Basically, the metrics are the same. So you need to put them upstream. And you need also to put caching upstream. So the data is sort of performant, it has the same performance, same good level of performance on every application. And then you need to put security controls upstream to make sure that the data is secure. So that's basically Cube. And that's a Headless BI. That's an idea behind Headless BI. Because what people, when they talk about Headless BI, they think about what if we take BI and just remove visualization from a BI? We can still keep data modeling. We can still keep caching, access control, but then we can make it API first. We can make it decoupled from visualization, and then everyone would be able to access this data model from a different visualization tools, and then makes it headless, right? So that's an idea of the headless BI.
Okay, that's very cool. Very good information. Thanks for that. And thanks for the question, Aditya. Also, we have one comment here from George Fricken. I was reading about Cube.js is the only open source solution for embedded analytics on the market. Nicely done. So can you share the story more? How did this start in, how is it the only one, the solution in the embedded analytics?
Yeah. So I think, when we started to think about the headless BI, it's like embedded analytics has been traditionally dominated by BI vendors, right? You go and you buy embedded analytics from a BI vendor. The problem with that is because it's integrated, it has visualization layer attached to itself. It puts a lot of restrictions on what you can do with that, how you can visualize data, how you can present data to your customers. So it doesn't give you enough flexibility and customization. And we thought, what if we make the BI headless, right? And then with the headless fact that customers, the users, they will be able to build any visualization they want. And that's an idea of embedded analytics, because with embedded analytics, you can you want to show data sort of in a branded feeling, look and feel of your application, right? And then you can kind of build your own visualization layer. You can build your own presentation tables, widgets, however you wanted to present it to the customers. And then it makes it that stack makes it ideal to deliver embedded analytics, right? You don't worry about all the infrastructure, data modeling, caching, but you really worry about what matters: customers experience, user experience, look and feel, UI, and you can build it basically the custom for your use case. And okay. I actually see that the question right after that question is, are there plans to expand out of JavaScript?
Exactly.
That's actually a really good question. Yes, the short answer is yes. We recently announced our plans to expand over to YAML and Python support. So basically, users would be able to build Cube's data model with YAML and a Python, not only JavaScript. And that's coming next year. We started a lot with the JavaScript community. The Cube.js was written in JavaScript. We distributed Cube as an NPM. But over time, we started to see more and more people from a data community started to adopt Cube. And in a data community, you usually see Python, for like a programming language, and you see YAML for the configuration, right? Like a dbt is a YAML based, and all the tools are YAML based. So we started to see many requests about YAML and Python support in the data modeling. So we decided to release that. So that's definitely coming in soon.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Thanks for that question, George. We also have a question here from Kate. Hey, Kate, very nice to see you. Who's this application built for? Very generic, but good question, I feel.
Yeah, I think, like the main users of Cube are either data engineers or application developers. One of the main use case would be embedded analytics. So you can put, like you can use Cube to embed analytics into your application and to show it to your customers. The second use case would be sort of, like internal analytics. So there are teams that have been using Cube to replace Looker, for example. In that case, you would probably want to use something like a Metabase or Apache Superset together with Cube.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it would work is you would use Cube for the data modeling layer, like a LookML, right? And then you would use Apache Superset for visualizations. And then together they sort of, like can replace a Looker for you. And then if the team wants to use a Metabase, sometimes it happens that some part of the team wants to use Apache Superset, and then maybe the other part of the team would want to use Metabase, right? Or third team would want to use Tableau. That's fine too. So because you define your semantic layer inside the Cube data model, it's possible to use all these tools to connect to the Cube and consume metrics from it.
Okay, pretty cool. Thanks for that information, Artyom. Also, that brings me to another important question around what is Headless BI and how does it fit into the modern data stack? Like you've given us a gist about it, but where do you see it exactly fitting in? That okay, this is where where we see the Headless BI.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it kind of sits in the middle between data warehouse and overall, and between the data sources and between the data consumption layer. So I think you would put Cube on top of the Snowflake, for example. You would, like the typical stack, what I see is the organization would ETL data into the warehouse. Maybe they would use Fivetran or Airbyte, try to put data into the warehouse, into Snowflake, for example. Then they would run transformation with dbt, for example, and then they would put Cube on top of that. Once Cube is on top of warehouse, you can define metrics, you can define data model, caching rules, access control inside Cube, all of that. And then you can expose Cube to if you want to build embedded analytics, you can use REST API, GraphQL API, and expose Cube as part of your embedded analytics solution to your customers. If you need to use it internally, you can use Apache Superset, again, Tableau, Metabase, Hex, Jupyter Notebook, all of those tools, you can put them on top of Cube to consume internally. So Cube kind of sits in the middle between data consumption tools and the warehouses. And it essentially, when we talk about Cube, we usually talk about 4 layers. It provides data modeling layer, caching layer, access control layer, and finally API layer.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Thanks for that information. Also, it's time for us to actually announce our first winners for the Cube swag. Let's see whom we can. So we'll be taking these two more winners that we'll be announcing after this. So stay tuned and all the best. So this is what I was talking about, Artyom. It actually picks up those who've typed in #CubeDev. This is cool stuff. Let's see. Oh, our first winner it's Kate. Congratulations, you win our swag from Cube and Rubics Cube. So congratulations, and a good question as well, Kate. So thanks for that info. Obviously, Artyom. Moving, obviously, I wanted to learn more about why consistent metrics and consistent data freshness are crucial for modern data apps. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of, like a part of the data-driven culture overall, right? As we discussed, if we wanted to make data-driven culture, we wanted to give data to everyone in the organization. So, like sales, marketing, product, customer success, they all consume data, they all consume metrics. The problem with that, we don't want them to define metrics because it could lead for different, like wrong wrong definition of the metrics, and then eventually will lead to disagreement and disalignment of in the teams, right? So we want to make sure that the sales have the same set of metrics and marketing have the same set of metrics. Even sometimes they have the same metric like MQL, right? Or like a marketing qualified leads, but they can they can measure that metric differently. What we really want to do, we wanted to have the system that, like a transparent and clear, and it kind of propagates to every department and provides a consistent metrics. So every department, they look at the same metrics, which are defined, which have the same definition because they're essentially the same. And that creates alignment on the teams. And when with alignment, just business executes better, right? So I think it's all about making sure that we are working against the same goal and we tracking the progress the same way.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thanks for that. Amazing insights, Artyom. Can you also tell us about the sweet spot data stacks, integrations, and the use cases of Cube? Like, how do you, first of all, we can talk about data stacks and integration and then jump onto the use cases. So,
right. Yeah. So I think, the sweet spot on the data source would be data warehouses, because Cube is essentially a modern data stack tool. So the modern data stack is really warehouse centric, right? So we have a first class support for the data warehouses. BigQuery, Snowflake, Redshift. We started to see a lot of ClickHouse, Firebolt lately as well, and Azure Synapse too. So I think the warehousing space is really interesting. And we have clear leaders right now, but we also have the really interesting challengers that potentially can be winners in a couple of years. So that's exciting space. And from Cube perspective, we really wanted to work with all of these tools. I would say the second category is more like of the data sources. The second category would be more around transactional or application databases. And you can put Cube on top of those too. Postgres, for example, MySQL, even MongoDB. And I think that space is actually developing very interestingly as well. I think more and more we're hearing about hybrid transactional and analytical processing. It's sometimes it's called HTAP, right? The abbreviation. So I think that there are many companies in that space. They're trying to go into that direction. Like there is a new interesting company called Neon, which is doing serverless Postgres. I think they're trying to bring the idea of like HTAP into Postgres. MongoDB is doing interesting things with releasing Atlas SQL and trying to do federation. There's really like a lot of things happening in that sort of application, like a transactional space, and Cube can support them as well. Finally, Cube supports streaming too. We have it in preview right now, but we are going to announce it soon. So there is a way to put a Cube on top of Kafka streams to basically query the streaming data and build all the features with the streaming data. So that's in terms of the data stack from a data sources perspective. From a data consumer's perspective, Cube works well with everything, like every tool you want to visualize data with. I would say first it's custom built. If you wanted to use React with Chart.js or Angular, Vue, all the like front-end frameworks and charting libraries, you can leverage Cube REST API or Cube GraphQL API to consume data from Cube. If you wanted to use some sort of existing BI tools like a Tableau or Metabase or Preset, you can use the Cube SQL API. So that's a typical, like a stack that Cube works with. And from use cases perspective, embedded analytics, we mentioned that as well. And also sort of internal dashboarding, reporting, there's some major use cases for Cube.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Very nice information there. And there's also one quick question here from Aditi. What's an ideal modern data stack? We see so many different versions. That's so true. What do you think about that?
I guess right now, because we are in the so early days, we don't have, like the reference stack yet. I think we are going, like technology usually goes through the cycles. And right now we're in a cycle where we have this proliferation or explosion of different tools. I think in a couple of years you'll start to see some consolidation. That's usually how it happens, right? But right now we're just really going through the explosion, and that's why we have this feeling, and that's actually true, right? We have so many tools, we don't know which one to pick, right? So I think my ideal data stack would be, we definitely want to go with a warehouse. It's either Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, or like a ClickHouse Firebolt, one of this. Transformations pretty much done usually with dbt, so there's not much choice of here. ETL, we have Fivetran, we have Airbyte. I personally use Stitch. I think in our company, because I mean, like, I think I remember the old days when they have this open source project Singer, so we even contributed at Singer back then. And I know that Stitch got acquired by Talend, and unfortunately they're not developing the product as good as they used to. But I'm still use that. But there are like a lot of good alternatives like Airbyte or Meltano or like Fivetran. So and then with a there are so many other categories like a cataloging, Atlan, right? Like observability, Big Eye, Monte Carlo. So it's like just pick a tool that works for you, right? And and kind of try to test few of them. And I guess we don't really need to be a collectors here of the tool. We just kind of bring a tool when we have a problem. So that's sort of what I usually do is like, if we have a problem, we just find the best solution for that. Eventually, again, we'll have some consolidation, but right now, I think we just have so many different tools, but we need to learn how to navigate them.
Okay, yeah, pretty cool. We also have a question here from YouTube, and it says, what do you think are some of the problems of modern data stack? Obviously, with all the good things, there are some problems as well, because with a lot of versions, obviously there's a lot of confusion as well at the same time. So what do you think are some of those problems?
Yeah, I think there are many different problems, but if you try to sort of categorize in a summary and try to understand what is the root cause of this problem, it's just like a growing pains or transformation pains, right? Because we are going from the old stack, which old stacks, they were mostly consolidated, and now we're going into the data warehouse centric stack where we have a lot of different tools that try to plug and play with each other. And I feel we have so many good intention here. It's like we really wanted to build open ecosystem. We really want to try to build the best tools for the job. We think about data practitioners, about their productivity, about giving them really tools to make an impact, and kind of helping business drives the decision. I think it's just all growing pains, like a little bit anxiety around like so many tools. I don't know which one to pick. That's a problem, obviously. There are also problems around cost, at least at this point, because, like having all these tools together, that could be quite expensive because it's maybe not optimized well, right? But again, it's all just a pains that, like eventually I think we will go through. I would love to see more open source based stack. I think that would benefit ecosystem a lot. I know that we still need, we still need somehow to pay engineers, right? So we can build this tool. So I assume that's going to be a lot of like commercial companies, but I feel that, like having open source, at least some base features in open source, that would benefit data stack a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think it's early, but it's very, it looks very optimistic. And I think, like we just need to go through some of the exciting transformation times and solve many problems. And we'll see much more mature space in a couple of years.
No, yeah, 100%. I agree. And I also agree with the point where you mentioned, obviously, about having more, open source data stacks where people can actually feel more confident and they can actually go and give it a try and have those initial features at least. But yes, there's obviously where you need to pay to the engineers, and they're doing that great work. So commercial companies have to be a part of it, and I think that's how it works. But those are great insights. Thanks for that, Artyom. That also brings me to a very important topic, which is a very hot topic today, that is data engineering. And I wanted to hear from you, because I'm sure you work closely with a lot of data engineers, but talking about, this, I know for a fact there was a question here from George Fidikin. We'll take that and then we'll jump on to mine. So George is asking, is Cube mostly used by data engineers, or is it like a mixed bag?
Yeah, I think it's still mixed bag. We started
Yep.
with a lot of application developers using Cube, and even some front-end developers use Cube. But I think that over time, we just started to see more and more data engineers. And maybe very recently, we started to have more data engineers in our community than application developers. And that's why I mentioned before, right? We have a big plans to support Python and YAML, which is a more native ecosystem for data engineers. So I would say, again, still mixed bags, but we see more and more data engineers every day.
Okay, pretty interesting. So that also, like, the question that I had was around data engineering as a space, and how do you see it evolving in the next 2 to 3 years? Where do you see it going? And because we always see, the tech space evolving, but data engineering as a space, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we'll see more application of software best practices applied to data practice overall. And I think idea of the data engineer is actually exactly this, right? We used to have only data analysts, and then we had software engineers, and now we kind of have data engineers, right? So we try to say, like, we data people, we analyze data, we still try to derive insights, but we also like engineers because we apply engineering approaches to the data, right? And there is also even the new term, right, like analytics engineer, which is a sort of like continuation of the idea of the data engineers. So what we really idea here is like how we can make data work, how we make data practitioners workflow be closer to the software engineers workflow, right? Like how we apply version control systems here, how we apply tests, how we apply monitoring, observability, CI, CD, all of that sort of things that been a while in software engineering world, but they were new to data. And frankly, we don't have tools there, right? I mean, because we cannot just take existing tools. Sometimes we can take existing tools, like we can use Git for, like Cube is integrated with Git, right? So you can use Git to store Cube data model and manage sort of version control of it. Same for dbt, right? But sometimes you just cannot use existing tools from software world. So I think what we'll see is we'll see more and more software engineering practices in a data world, like application of these practices in a data world. And I think, again, it's just same with the DevOps. If like we can look at what DevOps is now, and I think that's where the data space is heading as well.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Also, since these are great insights about how data engineering will evolve, obviously, in the near future, but also, what do you see as the one or two big things that will happen in the data space according to you, and why?
I think we started to see some consolidation in a couple of years. I still not sure whether it's good or not for the ecosystem. I think that's just like the natural flow of the things. We saw that, for example, Snowflake bought Streamlit, right? So that's an example of the consolidation. I think that's like a larger company will start to buy some of the existing modern data stack companies to add some features to it. So, like we may see some of the big warehouse vendor could buy observability tool or something, right? The same way they bought the Streamlit. So we definitely will see that. I also think that we will, like hopefully we will see more sort of, like a closer collaboration with the data engineering world and like ML world, like where we'll have more like machine learning practitioners sort of, like to start working together with more like data engineers. I think there are some few interesting trends that is happening because like there are a few companies that innovate in a space of analyzing, running machine learning algorithms within data warehouses or running them with a SQL, right? Which practically enables data engineers to be sort of machine learning engineers too, just to run a simple, algorithms or recommendation engine. Because in many cases, you don't need to really have something fancy, right? You can just use some basic prediction or like a recommendation system and just apply to your case. So I think we'll see more and more this crossover happening. And like finally just more things coming from the software world, like the data contracts. A lot of people have been recently talking about the data contracts over the internet. So I think that's something, like idea of the microservices in interfaces, APIs between them, and just that sort of how the data contracts been inspired. So I think we'll see more of this.
Oh yeah, I've been following a lot around. First of all, thanks for that consolidation information that you've given. Obviously, it does make a lot of sense where there'll be a lot of bigger companies who would want to have like such, companies which are mid-size or even small-size companies, and they'll want those features within their company. So that makes a lot of sense. And 100% on the data contracts, I've seen obviously there's Chad, Sanderson, or Ethan. They've been talking so much about it. So that would be an interesting space to look at 100%. Thanks for that, Artyom. Before we jump on actually to our last few questions, let's do our second giveaway very quickly here. We already have 8 more entries, and let's see who the next winner is. All right. I think I just forgot to pick that up. So let me first share my screen so people can actually see. And let's go. Okay, Aditi is the second winner. So congratulations. We still have a chance. You still have a chance to win for the third one. So guys, whoever attending, you can actually type in hashtag Cube.dev and enter the raffle. Talking about Cube, obviously, Artyom, I have a question for you. What's next for Cube? And are you guys also hiring? Because I know a lot of engineering companies are hiring right now, when the market is obviously very tough, but would love to know about that side. But what's next for Cube first?
Yeah, and I just want to say we're hiring. So we're hiring across many positions, and many of them are related to data engineering, right? So whether it's more like on the product side or more like a customer facing, more like internal data, we hire across many data engineering roles. So, please just apply, or, find me on LinkedIn and just, DM me. So I'm happy to chat. What's next for Cube is, I think I mentioned a few things already, right? I mentioned the YAML and Python support coming in. That's one piece of the bigger push at Cube internally to support more data engineers ecosystem. So we wanted to have more integration with an ecosystem, with a data engineering ecosystem at Cube, including programming languages of the choice for data engineers like Python, including more like orchestration tools like a Prefect or Airflow. We wanted more integration with overall like ecosystem. The second big push would be around the real-time support. We're actually just about to release a few big things with the integration with the streaming world. So that's kind of a big thing at Cube. And generally, we're just building more and more features for the semantic layer, because that's where, we see a lot of adoption and a lot of traction, like people using Cube to build the metrics, to build the data models, to build the semantic layer, and then consume the tools like Tableau or Apache Superset.
Pretty interesting information that is, Artyom. Also, if obviously you mentioned if people want to also learn more about, first of all, I've shared with the folks who are interested to check out the open positions. You can actually go and apply here, or maybe reach out to Artyom directly with a DM and ask him about the different positions. But this was a very cool session. I think I must say, Artyom, you've covered it very well in terms of starting from obviously your journey and how you've got into the data and analytics, about Cube Dev, about the data-driven culture, about modern data stack, about Headless BI, about data stacks, integrations, the use cases, obviously, and obviously to close with the data engineering space. So thanks a lot for covering a huge ground here. It also brings us to the final giveaway for our audience here, and let's do the final one here. We have 11 entries. all the best to everyone. This is the final one, but not exactly the final one. We'll also be picking 7 other winners who have actually entered the raffle. So let's go. All the best, everyone, and thanks for participating. We won't be picking the same winners again, hopefully. So Aditi, we'll have to go again. Sometimes, so there's an overlap here, but let's see. Okay, Surendra from YouTube. Amazing. Congratulations, everyone, for participating, and thanks for participating. Obviously, you get the cool swag from Cube. One last question, Artyom, that I have for you is if people want to reach out to you, reach out to your community and learn more about Cube, where can they go and what all can they learn from the website as well?
Yeah. I think the best way to reach out Cube community is to go to our Slack channel. So it's just cube.dev/Slack, and you can join our Slack community there, and like you can reach out to me, and that you can talk to our team. So I think that would be the best place. It's slack.cube.dev. And also, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. Obviously, like happy to chat, and you can go to our website. It's at cube.dev, and just to find more resources about Cube.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Thanks for the insights, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It was super insightful. Artyom, thanks for taking the time out and joining the Ravit Show. I can't wait to obviously do a 2.0 session very soon where we can learn more about the developments that you have had, and you have some fantastic plans to get the ball rolling for the data community. You're very much in this space. You know the space very well. So can't wait to learn from you again on the Ravit Show 2.0 session. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining, and Ravit, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.